a race victory, as will Ross Stoner from pole position. Paul Savage alongside. There is only Jack McPhillips on row 2. No sign of Oliver Divine King. He disappeared in his race yesterday, didn't he? I seem to recall.
Production Cup, yeah.
Production Cup, yeah. I think he might have been a non-starter, actually, in the second race there, so some sort of issue with his car. Then Paul Roddison and John Wyatt at the front of the next portion of the grid, ahead of Tim Evans and Tony Hunter, Christopher Garnham and Mark Shepherd. Then Simon Tomlinson and Paul Hoggins. Jonathan Halliwell has David Richardson for company. Then David Lawrence and Dawn Butcher, with Stephen Watson, Matt Anderson, Paul Dunningham, Harley Young and Andrew Dean. Now, David Lawrence's car was also a little bit off the pace in its races yesterday, and I did notice was on the back of the trailer when I walked past it in the paddock earlier on, so I'll have to keep an eye out for that on the green flag lap, but we may not have David Lawrence's Cupra on the grid. I can't see it, no, so I think that may well be, sadly, another non-starter.
Unfortunately so, and I think he was hoping that the issues he was suffering from, at least he was asking for some kind of, I think, a crankshaft sensor, according to Rob, when I spoke to Rob this morning, and asking about, his car was trundling around the paddock and being driven around, but obviously whatever issue he had, something to do with an engine sensor of some kind, with a crankshaft or something along those lines, was either not found or it wasn't repaired to the standard which he was happy with, and that's hence he was a bit off pace in qualifying. Tried it in qualifying and wasn't quite satisfied to do so. Just notice also that Tony Hunter looks like he's in Kerry Lewis's Volkswagen Golf Mark V. It's the white and green car which usually Kerry drives, but obviously Kerry either unable to race it or has offered it to Tony to compete this weekend. So Tony's got a quite capable car in his hands. He's a capable driver himself. You've usually seen him before racing in another series in a white Renault Clio, and more recently he's been racing in this series in Classic VWs in a yellow Seat Leon, I think, if I'm correct, but it's the first gen Seat Leon, as in those like the Super Copa cars in that sense. But he's now jumped into, I'm guessing that because he had some issues, I think he had some problems at Snetterton, if I'm right, so it means he's now jumped into Kerry Lewis's car, and Kerry unable to race it this weekend. You can just see the white and green car just on the right shot, just on the screen, physically above the 101 car, the 124 car, Paul Savage on the front row of the Audi TT Cup portion of the grid. There's the last little bit of recovery for Simon Light's car, so they've fallen them up and should get them on the green flag lap fairly shortly. And more in history regarding the TTs, it's quite interesting you've got Tim Evans' cars there, because that car which he had started out as the original base car, that was the development car, the genesis of what became the Audi TT Cup in BRSCC circles, but that's now evolved so much more, but it's far from being the standard TT Cup spec machine, as you rightfully said, Andy, so that car has to sit in the Classic VW regs. Now we're going to get set for our formation lap. They're going to get the full 15-minute quota for this start. Also mentioned as well, you've got at the back of the field Andrew Dean in the VW Vento. That is BTCC star Dave Pinkney's car, which he shares with Andrew Dean throughout the season. And so Andrew driving that car, but it is his actual VW Vento Cup car. Of course, he's been a stalwart of British touring cars previously, had a couple of stints, one in the Super Tourer era, and then very briefly when he came back with Team Dynamics in the black and pink machine. And that seems to be, given it's in his name, he always tends to have a tinge of pink in whatever he drives.
Yes, he was a character, Dave Pinkney, back in his touring car days, definitely, and pretty handy peddler, to be fair. It's not an easy championship to jump into and be competitive in, but he was always up for it, wasn't he? And yeah, a lot of one-make success at national level before that, so great to have that car out there. It's a bit like the Vectra Challenge car that we had out in the CNC Heads races, a bit of a blast from the past from late 80s, early 90s production saloon style racing. So the 3 Audi TT Cup cars at the front of the field then, Ross Stoner, Paul Savage and Jack McPhillips. Jack McPhillips was well off the pace in qualifying, so I suspect he had some dramas with his 117 Audi. Hopefully they got to the bottom of that, because he was some 20 seconds off the pole position pace, which is a lot, and I suspect there was more to it than just driver ability there. So Jack hopefully has got the car working as it should be. Paul Roddison at the front, as we said, at the next portion of the grid, where we expect some decent battling, I think, and a couple of stories to monitor. A shame we don't have David Lawrence, though, because I think he and Paul Roddison would have had some entertaining battles towards the front of the field. A little bit surprised we're keeping this at 15 minutes, although, as I say, we have got a handful of 20-minute races, 2 20-minute races to come later on, which could be maybe trimmed down to 15. But we really can't afford any further delays, can we? The weather, for now at least, is playing ball. It's brightening up again. We had that little shower at the beginning of the BMW race, but beyond that, track conditions are not terrible. Dry, and the wind perhaps dying down slightly as well. So hopefully we're good with weather for the rest of the day. There's the 53 VW Scirocco, Stephen Watson, who starts alongside Matt Anderson's Seat Leon. Handful of Sciroccos in the midfield portion of the VW Audi Racing Championship. So to the line come the field, and Ross Stoner will pull into pole position. And yeah, he was about a second and a half or so quicker than Paul Savage in qualifying, so he'll be feeling quite confident about a race win here, Ross Stoner. But as we've seen in races earlier on in the weekend, qualifying pace doesn't always dictate necessarily the form during the races. So there you see the gap between the two fields. So again, a bit like the BMW Super Cup, the first 3 cars in this case will accelerate, and then there'll be a 10-second delay before the rest of them. So we'll get the leaders through Redgate Corner probably, and then have to turn our attentions immediately back to the much bigger second pack of cars. Grid then more or less in position, and in blustery but still dry conditions for now here at Donington Park. Our first RacingLine VW Audi Racing Championship event of the day gets underway. And Ross Stoner accelerates from pole position, will hold on to the lead heading down into Redgate Corner. And no challenge in the end from Paul Savage. Now away goes the second group of cars. One of the Sciroccos a bit slow away mid-pack. Has Roderson been able to hold on to the advantage? Maybe, maybe not, because Tony Hunter has got to grips with that Golf pretty quickly. Challenges for the lead on the outside line. Roderson's late on the brakes though and manages to hang on through Redgate Corner. Hunter slots into second position. And John Wyatt, I think that was, coming into third in the Golf. Out of Redgate they go. Roderson the leader, but Tony Hunter is up for the fight.
I think that Octavia is four-wheel drive, which probably explains why he got such a good start, but it was actually equally good getaways, as you said, from both John Wyatt and Tony Hunter, and rightfully so, getting used to... He's got plenty of front-wheel drive experience, of course, having raced a Seat Leon, and before that he is for a Clio in many cases, so he's not too averse to that. Got almost 3 abreast between 24.50 and 140. Simon Tomlinson's, well, it's the next Simon Tomlinson car, which has Simon Tomlinson at the wheel of it, once I get tongue-tied, and... to go up through McLean's for the first time. Hunter's giving Wilson as good as he gets. I think one thing it could be is that it's a little bit heavier than the Golfs around him. And that there is Jack McPhillips, who is keeping out of the way with the rookie cross, not to get involved too much. And almost letting the entire Classic VW field string past. The two out front Audi TTs go past our box, so we're looking here at this battle between the Classic VW lead, and Tony Hunter looks to the outside to get the up and under, the switch back through the chicane, but no move so far as they wiggle their way through for the first time, and it is Roderson who leads the way just from Hunter and John Wyatt, and that car's in a bit better shape than we saw it last time, because last time we saw that car, ooh, there was flames coming out of it, and there was almost flames for that pack. There were 4 wide at one point as they tried to squeeze their way through. The main mover on that was the Scirocco, I think, of Halliwell that was trying to move up the order as much as he could. Came across the line thinking some 14th place. There was a couple of Sciroccos mixed in there. Down through the Craner curves they go. And if anything now, Wyatt is closer to Hunter than Hunter is to Roderson. Tim Evans also squeezing in as well. And also keep an eye on Shepherd in the 333 car, that being the Mark IV Golf of Mark Shepherd, and that must mean Simon Tomlinson might be a little bit out of position because he's usually much higher up the field. And he's now trying to pick his way past Dawn Butcher in that Mark V Golf. So Roderson leads, but having had a shaky and initial challenge from Tony Hunter, Tony's now falling back into the clutches of John Wyatt, whose car seems to be much healthier than it was last time we saw it.
Yes, that's good news, but yeah, slightly clumsy run through the chicane there for some of the midfield runners. That could easily have ended in drama. We've got side by side now for second position. John Wyatt to the inside of Tony Hunter. Hunter, remember, got ahead of Wyatt at the start, but Wyatt in qualifying was over a second quicker than Tony, and he's now able to move back through, and did that quickly as well before, significantly, Paul Roderson got too far away from him. So Roderson comes through. Paul was actually quicker than all of the Audi TTs as well in qualifying, so in theory should be able to close in on the leaders, and indeed he is. He was 1.3 seconds quicker than that man, Ross Stoner, who leads overall. A few more spots of rain on the camera lens, I think, down at the Craner curves. That's a tricky part of the circuit to have changeable conditions, but I think maybe we are getting a little sprinkling again across the circuit. hopefully that won't catch too many drivers out in the early stages of this 15-minute race. There goes the 58 Audi through shot of Paul Hoggins. But yeah, Roddison, I'd be intrigued now to see whether he can actually go on and challenge for an overall race win. I think he'll definitely catch Paul Savage, who is 7 seconds ahead of him at the start of the lap. Whether over the remaining 11 minutes he can catch Ross Stone, we'll have to wait and see. Certainly though, Roddison has the pace of the field within his category, doesn't he? He's getting away again from Wyatt, and that Octavia running well.
Certainly is. He's tuned it well. Like I said, it's a slightly more of an odd, not typical car that you find in club racing, but I think Paul Roddison trying to find something different, and not say trying to set a trend, but of course he's certainly got something that's much more interesting to some of the average club racing cars that you would find. Not that they're not interesting either, but Paul Roddison's car is certainly a talking point, being is a Skoda. You don't get Skodas very racing very often in terms. Of course, they're more associated with rallying rather than circuit racing, and they were more so way back in the day in the 60s and 70s or further back. There is Ross Stoner, the lone, well, in terms of being challenged, Audi TT car. He's not the only one, of course. There's two more in the field. There's one of them, which is Paul Savage, and about to be caught, and I think I'll have even passed in a few moments' time by Paul Roddison. So after a slightly slower start, of course, with that 10-second delay, these cars are certainly picking the pace up. Roddison has now picked his way past Paul Savage, and John White should follow him through in a few seconds' time. Roddison now enjoying nice clear air in front of him in terms of current track position, and he should catch Ross, who is, to be fair, lapping in 1 minute 20s, but Roddison is 11 seconds back at this point, but trying to close the gap as quickly as he can. So a nice gap forming already as Roddison turns his way through Coppice Corner. And we've got Wyatt in second in that Classic VW segment. And then Tony Hunter followed by Tim Evans. And up to 5th position in that category has gone Christopher Garner, one of the Audi A3s in the field, Audi A3/S3s. That's the Audi 3 front-wheel drive car in P5, slightly lighter than the S3, which will have 4-wheel drive if I remember correctly. And the chicane. Tony Hunter just adapting on the fly to this VW Golf as he comes down the pit straight once more. And there you see Garland ahead of the yellow Mark IV Golf with Shepherd, and then you've got Paul Hoggins in the ex-TT Cup Racing spec machine. That car was also out in Production Cup yesterday with a couple more of the Audi TTs, one of which was supposed to be Robin for the Viking, who didn't make the second start or even out of qualifying from this morning. There's another TT which has Richardson, also a driver from yesterday, so a couple of drivers doing double duty more than one series this weekend, and certainly getting their money's worth.
They are indeed. Paul Roddison then up to second overall, but only about half a second quicker than Ross Stoner on the previous lap. Of course, he was busy overtaking Paul Savage on that previous lap, so might now be able to go a little bit quicker. His best lap is the fastest lap of the race, Paul Roddison. It was almost 2 seconds quicker than the best effort from Ross Stoner, so I suspect that gap's going to start coming down again. Roddison to Wyatt, 1.2 seconds or so. So Paul Roddison then with a strong pace in the Octavia. As Paul Hoggins winds his way through Coppice Corner with a nice little battle going on just ahead of him. Further up the order, this is second, third and fourth within the VW Audi Racing Championship part of the race. And Tim Evans actually sets the fastest lap of the race. He was off the back of that group. Tim Evans faster than anyone else. Had a change further back, and that was for 6th in class, well, 8th overall, 6th within that part of the race for Paul Hoggins. Just behind actually Garnham and Shepherd, who swapped over 2 places gained actually that time for Mark Shepherd. So Mark Shepherd's Golf is the one marching forward in that little group. But this is second, third and fourth. Roddison, Wyatt and Hunter, with Evans catching them behind. Sorry, Wyatt, Hunter and Evans, I should say. Evans the fastest of the 3 in the Audi TT. So another TT that isn't in TT Cup spec, but going quickly and closing in on the 2 Golfs ahead.
Also as well, Roddison was 2.1 seconds quicker than Stoner out in front as well. So he's got that gap down to 8.7. So even though momentarily it looked as though Stoner wasn't losing as much time, the fact that in slightly clearer air, these leading Classic VW Cup cars are now starting to lap better than Ross Stoner's Audi TT, will offer the fact that they're starting to find their pace in the second half of this 15-minute race. So down the pit straight comes past our position of Ross Stoner. His lap was 1:21.4, he's lost a bit more pace. One of that Roddison, 1:18.7. The gap's down now by another, 2.7 seconds, down to 6 almost exactly. It's now a three-way fight for second in the Classic VW ranks and third overall. Continues to rage between the two Golfs, followed by Tim Evans's, essentially it's a mother chassis, if you like, the kind of the Genesis development car of the what becomes the Audi TT Cup cars, you see there for Ross Stoner. And we're not letting Rollison get away that much. They're keeping him in touching distance as they come through the old hairpin. The gap between the lead in that Classic VW Cup segment, only 1.2 seconds, and Rollison, in fact, he lost time to them. He lost 2/10 to Wyatt and lost a full 6/10 to Hunter and half a second to Tim Evans. So trying to push on, but not getting away too much. And these three, if they continue to work a bit more together like they are, might not allow Rollison to relax too much as he continues his own pursuit of trying to catch Ross Stoner for the outright race lead.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Rollison not massively getting away, as you say, and if when he catches Ross Stoner, Ross comes over all defensive, he only has to keep Rollison at bay for maybe half a lap, and it would bring Wyatt, Hunter and Evans right onto their tail. There is Evans just peeking to the inside of Tony Hunter, who again was overtaken seemingly quite easily by John Wyatt earlier on, but has stuck with the gold and black VW Golf. So it's 3.7 seconds now between Stoner and Rollison. Rollison 1.5 or 1.4 clear of Wyatt. Here comes Evans again to the inside. It's a speculative look, but not fully committing to the move, and so actually just ends up losing himself momentum through the corner. Bit of lap traffic now for Ross Stoner to deal with as well. This is going to further delay the TT Cup leader. That's music to the ears of Paul Rollison, who I'm sure would love to win the race outright. It makes no difference to him. He's still going to win his part of the race and his class within it at the moment, but he'd love to be the first one to see the checkered flag, and that's looking more and more likely to happen.
Seems like it. He's managed to negotiate Harley Young's VW Scirocco quite cleanly, as has Paul Rollison. Harley keeping cleanly out of the way. It's good driving from Harley to allow the faster cars through and get around their own way. This battle still going on between Tony Hunter and Tim Evans. They're not really catching John. In fact, John's trying to go with Paul at this stage of the race, although that said, on the straight at least, Tony's got a bit more straight line. He's pulled away there from Tim Evans, getting a good exit off of Coppice, and now he's tried to, looks at Evans' car is better under brakes, he's now closed back in, but they're both trying to close in on John Wyatt's car, who momentarily got closer. Must have been the punch off the corner, which they both got, and the exit from John wasn't as best. Ross Stoner now has a rather large grey and green Skoda Octavia looming in his mirrors because they come across the line. The gap was barely over a second, and once again he took another, 2.6 seconds out of him, because that was a slower lap of 1:21.5. Trying to get past Harley's car, that's what held him up and lost him the time. A little wayward through the crane occurs, but Rollison is on the prowl. LED headlights ablaze. He turns in through the old hairpin. Wyatt trying to go with him, and Tim Evans has got past Tony Hunter. So that is now him into third in the VW Cup segment. And Ross Stoner, in fact, not only has let first through, he's also let John Wyatt through. There was a momentary sort of jump that we thought that he was suffering some kind of a problem. He's back up to speed. Whether he thought that it's not his race to win because he's in the Audi TT Cup ranks rather than the Classic VWs, but even so, it's all in one grid, so you would have thought maybe he'd want to try and fight for position, but he doesn't seem too bothered, and he'd let defend for position. In fact, he's letting them all go because he realises he's probably having a very blissful Sunday afternoon drive as the runaway leader in the TT Cup ranks.
Yeah, no, I don't know though. I think that car's off pace. It's continuing to drop back now quite significantly down the back straight, so I'm not convinced all is well with Ross Stoner's car. He might just be giving them a bit of space, I suppose. He's not pitting, but that's a very, very slow lap for Ross Stoner. Yes, I know he was backing off, but that was 8 seconds off his best, so keep an eye on that. It definitely seems like he's dropped back further again at the start of this lap, so if there is a drama, then Paul Savage could yet inherit the win in the TT Cup part of the race, but Paul Rollison now has his hands full of John Wyatt, who has closed to within a couple of car lengths now of the race leader. And he is the race leader now, Paul Rollison. Paul a bit slow off the old hairpin. And so John Wyatt starts to close in again, heading up through Starkeys and Schwantz Curve. There is the 46 Audi turning its way through Redgate. Paul Dunningham, he's got the 53 VW Scirocco just behind of Stephen Watson. This is a battle for 9th overall. This is for 1st overall, though. Paul Rollison with some defending to do now. He's going to have 2 laps left at the end of this one, and we could be in for another grandstand finish.
Yeah, John's pace has picked up significantly, hasn't it? What was last time out? And 1:19.2. It was a 1:18.6 for Wyatt as they come back into the chicane. They've navigated the lap traffic, which was another of the Scirocco's by the look of it. Another one of the cars that was... No, it's a Seat Leon that's going past. Just saw that come in the viewpoint. Down the straight they come. And I think also Robertson's woken up a little bit more now, and Tim Evans has gone with them. So Tony Hunter's really dropped back. That was 21.5 on that move. So 2 seconds lost. They turn into Redgate Corner. So what we thought was going to be Robertson relatively comfortable out in front, it's now becoming a three-way fight for the lead in the Classic VW Cup ranks and overall, respectively, as they come down towards the bottom of the hill. Jack Phillips has been in the mix, and also the pit lane 2 comes the 15er Chris Garner, and he was quite far down the order anyway. He was standing 17th, but he was as high 5th at one point, and it's Tony Hunter, who has locked up into the old hairpin through the right-hander, but Robertson continues to lead as they come on to, this will be the penultimate lap of the race, but I imagine he's going to be under some immense pressure, as there was quite a lot of understeer there for John Wyatt through McLean's, coming under threat from Tim Evans. I think this might not be such settled, but he's going to have probably one more lap to try and deal with Paul Robertson before he finally gets the salvation of a checkered flag in this first race.
Yes, now can Evans get past Wyatt here quite quickly? Because if he can, he might have a chance to go after Paul Robertson. There's still a lap to go after this, remember. Evans is looking to the inside of Wyatt into the chicane. Does he commit to the move? Yes, he does. Does he come out in front? Yes, he does. So Tim Evans then up to second. It was a bit of a clunky move in that they both really delayed each other quite a bit through the chicane. It will lose them a bit of time to the leader. 1.4, nearly 1.5 seconds the gap. But Evans is into second, and he, remember, has been the fastest car on track. He has the fastest lap of the race. Only fractionally quicker than Paul Robertson's best. But at this stage of the race, I'd say Evans is the quicker of the two. But did he lose a bit too much time in that overtake to be able to catch Robertson over the remaining 2/3 of a lap? He's going to be pushing as hard as he can now, I'm sure, to try and get within striking range. But even if he gets there, of course, getting past Paul Robertson is not going to be the easiest of things to do. We'll see whether any of this happens. In the modified Ford race, we were sort of ready to hand the victory over to the race leader at this point. That ended up not being quite as straightforward as we thought, and I wonder whether it's going to be the same story here. Evans, though, I don't think is eating into this gap that Robertson's got quite quickly enough, is he? Robertson managing it nicely, and John Wyatt in third position with, again, seemingly a bit of a lack of pace in the closing stages. Dropping well back now from the top two, who head towards the final chicane. And Paul Robertson, I think, is going to weather the storm here. Tim Evans, if he'd have got past John Wyatt maybe a lap earlier, would have had a chance. But as it is, it's going to be a victory for the Skoda Octavia on its return to the series. Paul Robertson wins by, in the end, only 0.7 of a second or so over Tim Evans second, and John Wyatt in third. Tony Hunter will come home a fairly distant fourth after that big lock-up down at the old hairpin that time, on the last time round. And then Ross Stoner, who did continue, Ross Stoner. His pace did not improve, though. His last lap was a 1:27, so has Ross Stoner made it to the flag? Not yet. Hoggins comes through. There is Ross Stoner. But there was definitely an issue for Ross Stoner. That car was well off the pace from about half race distance or so. But it will still be a comfortable victory in the class. Paul Savage just coming through now to finish second of the TT Cup cars. And there he goes, the black and white car. With Jack McPhillips. Did Jack McPhillips continue? Yes, he did, but a couple of laps down on the rest of the field. In fact, might well have retired. No, there he is, the 117 car coming to the line. And that will be, I suspect, the last car to see the checkered flag. Indeed it is. So Paul Robertson victorious, and another bit of a nail biter that in the closing stages, with Tim Evans coming through in second position. But less than a second in it, and with another lap, maybe Tim would have had a shot at grabbing the win. John Wyatt was third, ahead of Tony Hunter and Paul Hoggins, with Ross Stoner winning his class in 6th overall. Simon Tomlinson and Paul Dunningham next, ahead of Stephen Watson and Paul Savage. Jonathan Halliwell and David Richardson also getting victories within their various classes. In fact, Richardson a guest driver within the series. Dawn Butcher was next, then it was Andrew Dean and Matt Anderson, Harley Young, Christopher Garnham and Jack McPhillips, with Mark Shepherd in the end. Not the only non-finisher, actually, because Garnham was also not running at the flag. They were both in the pit lane, Christopher Garnham and Shepherd, neither of whom were able to see the checkered flag. So we'll